from go. It was from the gun going off. It was we didn't stop like for the entire time.
Any sort of positive remarks so far?
As far as ours?
What went right? Yeah.
So
it's hilarious.
I'm really curious to get your thoughts on this. As far as my own thoughts of what went right, I mean, I had some very specific goals going into this global game jam, which were kind of similar to the goals I've had for the last few game jams I've done with people collectively with the Tech Valley Game Space group here, which is I just wanted people on the team to be learning stuff. I was working with people who it might have been like among their first few games, or Terrence, as you said, in Matt's case, his first game. So I wanted to be sure that we used the tool that was accessible for them, so that they could implement features if they wanted to, not just like contribute ideas, but really dive down into it. So I used Construct 2, which I'd used in the previous game jam that we did here.
It helps Matt a lot with that as well.
Didn't end up running up against any of the limits of the free version this time, so that was fine. We had an even smaller scope game this time than last time, which was good. Scope worked out really well. I think as well, I did want people to feel like their ideas, like their creative ideas, somehow made it in to the final thing. Hence, that's what led to, as I said, us kind of jamming two different ideas, one for Matt and one for Matt together. But actually, the design process for our game was really smooth. I felt like it was really quick. Like we had a discussion, took maybe a half hour in the beginning, whereas like, it was basically just my own misinterpretations of Matt's ideas. Let me propose a way to
well, isn't that like the perfect way to make a game? You just misinterpret somebody's idea.
I think that's what the big guys do.
Yeah.
That's pretty
I could go work for any AAA publisher now.
Perfect. You got the
skill
You
set.
got it right from mine.
Yeah.
I think Matt did too. He's like, he didn't really have it. He was very nebulous his idea anyway. So he was like, this is exactly.
So I'm really happy to hear that. So I felt like that went pretty right.
I'll speak for him.
As far as other things that went right, this kind of gets into something that went wrong, so I'll cover that part when we get there. But I'm like very organized in general. Sometimes that can bite me in a game jam because I'm meticulous, let's say, and that can mean slow. But it does mean that generally, like we had a Trello board with all the tasks in it. There was never really a lot of people sitting around saying, what do I do next necessarily? There was at least something they could check to have that kind of task listed out and prioritized. We had all talked about them and agreed. So there was a lot, we did a lot to reduce kind of confusion and people twiddling their thumbs. So I was happy about that. And what did you think as far as what went right with ours?
With our project? I think it was fine.
That's a perfect response.
And I are perfect teammates because I never shut up. And then he's very succinct.
It was fun.
So yeah, our project, the thing that did go well was organization, because we had two members who were, including myself, who were volunteers, so we had to be able to answer stuff at the game jam, and then two of our artists were off-site. And then one of our members had never done not only game jam, but any form of game development before. So we had very different people, very different places, but we were able to use Google Hangouts and set up a SVN. And using the two things, even though there was a bunch of chaos, we were actually able to stay in communication and getting stuff done basically most of the game jam until some problems came up. But the actual infrastructure we set up to get the project done worked very, very well, and it's still up, and now the game jam's over. We've actually been able to use the infrastructure to keep working on it, so that worked out. That worked out really well for us.
Can you very briefly describe for the audience here what SVN is, so that they understand what it is?
So SVN is stands for subversion, and it's a way of holding versions of your project, a history of your versions of your project in a central place where everyone who's working on it can push changes to. And if something goes wrong, you have a full history of each version, and you can roll back specific changes when you need to. And it makes things really easy, first of all, to keep track of how something evolves, and if something goes wrong, you have a safe place to go back. But it just gives them one place where everyone can pull from a same project instead of having to share individual files. It makes it very convenient for that.
I've mentioned to MagFest this as well in one of the panels. Basically, any sort of version control, as SVN happens to be one of the more popular ones, and in fact one that I personally recommend. I know Keith is going to say against that, but it is your insurance and your development, especially in a game jam's case where
no time to go
anything
back 8
can
hours
break
is
at
over,
the
yeah.
worst moment imaginable. Anyway, so that leaves Keith and I'm sorry, I forgot.
Hester.
Hester?
Astra. Yeah.
Astra.
Astro Boy.
Astra. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. So. Yeah, whichever one.
I'm actually struggling to come up with lots of things that went extremely right because I'm a perfectionist.
I think if you finished your game, that's a thing.
Yeah. I mean, we got a lot of stuff in there.
I think it looks
Anyone
great.
some awards.
There's a ton of art in there for sure.
It's a beautiful game, yeah.
And at the end of the day, we got a ton of code. I actually went through. We ended up having like 1,000 commits to our GitHub repo at the end of the weekend.
That's crazy.
Because we had 4 programmers, so that's what went right.
Yeah, there you go.
All 4 programmers, 1 artist. So
Just throw bodies at it.
Yeah. Actually, when you're done, I'm going to say something else that went right.
Okay, I think what went right for me is the amount of a willingness collaboration within the group. I feel that helps a lot of people with just like any group in general. Second thing is being able to eliminate and agree on features that we want quickly as possible. Because that's like, if we don't like it, just kick it out. If you like it, keep it. Don't have to argue so much about why you don't want it in, why you want it in, and stuff like that. Third thing is I would say being able to concentrate a lot on just the development side because we have only have a sort of limited amount of time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy in any other scenario if you're like being a hobbyist, for example, to be distracted by all the other side projects. Yep. There was a hilarious image I saw online where a guy's like trying to make half a house and then he goes on to make another half a house and just keeps on going, and he's like, how's your next side project going? He's like, yeah, it's almost done, but I now need to make this new house.
Right.
Yeah, and also I try to limit the scope as small as possible, but even then there's like lots of technical problems, which I will rant about later.
Oh yeah, terms.
So one real quick, one other thing that went right was, and I know this isn't like you're supposed to do this at Game Jam, but I work with Darren every year pretty much, and this is the thing is we only work together at the Game Jam, so it's not like we get to plan things out or anything. So it's still kind of fun. It's the only chance I get to work with him once a year. So that's really fun. So we know how we work in a game jam setting. So we know that, which is a good going in base. But also, like you said, Esther, having not like arguing over stuff. Like we're just like know what we want kind of thing really quickly, which was helpful. But also just the development process was really interesting. How I feel like it mirrored he actually works at a pretty large company, so that's pretty cool. But it was really like task oriented, like you were saying, organization and everything, and just really like he was making mock-up levels. At the exact same time I was making artwork.
Oh, nice.
And it was just a really good use of our time. I was doing animations, which I had problems with, which I'll get to next after when we do that. But I was working on the animations. He made levels he used Multimedia Fusion, but I mean whatever tool you're using, just make mock-up versions of it, that you're going to use for the actual stuff, and then just replace the art later.
Right.
And that's I think that's how it's done anyways.
You had placeholders as soon as possible.
Yeah, the first thing we did was get it working. We had the game working within an hour. We could play something. It was just squares, but it doesn't matter, And that's at the same time, this way we knew basically how much assets we needed too.
Yeah.
Right going in. So then I just made a list. So that was pretty cool. It was like we were in parallel.
just gonna follow on Twitch.
Nice.
But
yeah, we were in parallel.
I'm not streaming at all.
At the exact same time. Oh shit.
Shoot, we are now streaming. Okay, well, one thing we can do is we can try putting an Ethernet cord all the way to the laptop itself, because I know that.
Did we miss all of things?
It's the whole network. I can't
Nobody
connect.
it's me.
It's
It's
all
just they don't want to
wow.
hear it. Yeah, I was having trouble with my phone too. But, I mean, it's wireless. That's what I know.
Are we back streaming again?
That's my phone, but.
Are we streaming right now? That's a good question.
We're not.
No.
Technical difficulty. Or not. Okay.
Wah, wah, wah.